I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone. You're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: why is Sicario 2 an inferior film? First of all, before I go any further, there are going to be spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers, turn off now, come back later. I finally, last week, got to see Sicario 2, or Sicario Day of the Soldado, and it was a bit underwhelming, actually. Those of you who are regular watchers to my channel will know that I absolutely love Sicario. For me, Sicario is one of the best films that's been made in the last 20, 30 years. It's a really, really good film, and I have quite a detailed review of that on my channel that you can go and check out for more of an insight into why I think it's so good. But this film, it effectively just feels like a shadow of Sicario. There's something there that's not quite complete about this movie. It feels like an imitation of Sicario. Like there are certain things about Sicario that they have taken almost like in a formulaic way and said, well, you know, these were quite good in the first film, let's put them into this film as well, as if they're sort of signature hallmarks of what a Sicario film is supposed to be. And that way it sort of just feels like a bit of an imitation. It feels like only half a film to me. It's funny because it's 2 hours long, but story-wise, it feels like there should be more to this film, and maybe they've spent too much time dwelling on some things they didn't need to, and less time actually focusing on establishing a more total package, if you like, in regards to the film and the story itself. You walk away from feeling sort of more complete about. And it's not just the nature of the cliffhanger ending either, which is presumably setting up a third and final film in this trilogy, question mark. But it's like for example, Empire Strikes Back ends on a cliffhanger, but it feels like a solid and complete movie in the midst of all of that. Sicario 2 doesn't feel like a complete movie. It feels like there should be more here to this story. There's something not quite right. It hasn't all been tied together comprehensively enough, regardless of the cliffhanger ending or not. There's some interesting things about the writing in this one, which I found just a little bit frustrating. So, for example, the way in which the mission that they are given suddenly changes, it just completely turns on a dime, where you have them given this very serious mission to go across the Mexican border and basically wreak havoc. And then all of a sudden, very, very quickly, they are told to not only to stop that mission immediately, but they are then to start killing people to cover their tracks. It just seems so strange and weird. It was sort of strange and weird for a couple of reasons, because in the previous film, they are given a lot of rope, a lot of leeway. We've already seen this in the previous movie, to actually develop a mission and a plan and to keep, it's like it seems that they're getting more and more extreme as they go in their actions, but they're allowed to do that. Whereas in this film, it's like very quickly they're told no. Even after, as I said, just a couple of scenes before, they're given this big mission and given carte blanche, and then as soon as they carry out the first major action of it, it all gets shut off. The other thing that's kind of weird about it is the fact that they are trying to cover their tracks, but they want them to cover their tracks by going in and carrying out assassinations of a couple of people. And it just seems that would be a really dumb way to try and cover your tracks here in this scenario. I don't see what advantage that would give them, how that actually helps them in any meaningful way. If the situation already isn't bad enough, I can't see how it's going to be made better by assassinating two people, one of whom is the daughter of a drug cartel leader. It was just sort of a bit odd. Alejandro's death was another thing. It was pretty obvious, well, I thought it was anyway, that he wasn't actually going to be dead. And one of the big reasons for that, I felt, was because this was the kind of death that you would give to a character that you were writing out of a show, rather than to a sort of a staple character in your franchise. It just didn't feel like an authentic death you would give to this type of character who's so meaningful to this particular film, to this film franchise. It felt like the sort of death that you would give, a quick and rushed death, and seeing that made me straight away think, I don't think he's dead. That in and of itself is kind of weird, because we expected to believe that this young guy, first-time killer, was sort of had his wits about him enough to shoot a guy through the cheek, and he knew how to aim and do that. It was a little bit kind of contrived. I liked some things about it, though. I liked the whole Alejandro communicating with the deaf guy, and the fact that we discover that his daughter was deaf, and I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, some people might feel that was a little bit contrived, but I thought that was well enough explained, and I enjoyed that little sort of addition to who he was as a character. But basically, in a nutshell, I think this film is really lacking a couple of things. One is Denis Villeneuve. His presence, I think, is very noticeably absent from this film. The fact that he is not steering the ship here, because of what he brings to his filmmaking, and it does feel so substantially different here. Just the look and feel of this film is substantially different, even though a lot of the things are the same. And one of the things that I think is really different here is the previous film was this really interesting exploration of moral philosophies, and it's a very character-driven film. It's a lot about the various characters. This film does not feel character-driven. Instead, it feels more like a procedural film. It's more about the action. It's about following these people on this procedural journey. It doesn't feel so strongly focused on the characters and their motivations. And this brings me to the other thing I think it's missing, and that was a Kate-type character. So Kate, the character played by Emily Blunt in the previous film Sicario, her role in really anchoring that film is quite important. It's through her eyes that this whole journey unfolds, and we sort of, the interplay between her and the other characters is absolutely essential to all of this. But in this film, it feels like there's no one single character who is the anchor point around which this whole story is unfolding. And it's just a little bit too loose and disjointed. Without that Kate-type character to sort of anchor everything, something's not complete about this film. Now, they try a little bit. I think at times maybe Alejandro's meant to be that character. At other times, they even have Matt Graver, who's acting as this sort of Kate-type character, questioning their actions. It's just weird. It doesn't really work. It just doesn't work. So for me, like I said, this film feels like a shadow, an imitation, a half a movie that's trying to be something else instead of a whole and complete package. It'll be interesting to see what happens where they take the story next. It could well wrap things up really, really nicely. But for me, overall, this just wasn't quite as good. And if they want to really nail that third and final film, then I would suggest that Denis Villeneuve is the man to really do the job for them there. And they need to get back to that strong focus on a character-driven piece. Rather than something else that's just a series of action set pieces. Instead, it's really all about the characters and the interplays between them and these sort of complex questions of right and wrong. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on PayPal or Patreon. There's a link for both in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.